What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and this one will break down what's going on with the market, what you should be watching for going forward. I'm also going to give you guys an intraday update and break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, the QQQ, and many tickers out there. I'm also going to talk about the data coming out for tomorrow and what the technicals are telling us. Before I break anything down, let me just mention a couple of things. Firstly, I am not a financial planner, so take none of this as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link. The offer ends very soon. If you deposit any amount of money, you are guaranteed up to 12 free stocks. Anyways, let's talk about the market, what's going on right now. SPY is currently testing the VWAP, but why did the market sell off? Just as a quick reminder, basically the Fed came out yesterday and they were being quite hawkish in their report during the FOMC minutes. And with the Fed saying that they're going to be more restrictive with policy, they mentioned that what's going to dictate their policies is going to be the next pieces of data coming out, which involves the jobs numbers, for example, CPI, and etc. And they also mentioned that if we get too much strong data, suggesting that the economy is strong, that's going to incentivize the Fed to be more hawkish, to continue to raise rates, and once again, slow the market down. And they also mentioned that could lead to a recession. So what happened in the morning? The jobs numbers came out, and many of them were stronger than expected, right? The private sector jobs numbers were very, very strong, almost 2 times higher than what we expected. That's the amount of jobs that were added. It was dictated by many different sectors. And because of that, the market started to fear that the Fed is going to be more hawkish and this and that. But if anything, as the market started to sink, we saw a lot of buyers step in and they are defending their positions. So I'm going to break this down now from an unbiased standpoint and break down what this is looking like. Basically, when you look at SPY, this thing dropped very hard, coming all the way down to about 437. We broke below 438 and came very close to our chop zone, but we actually bounced just before it at 437. After getting the bounce, this thing started to push up, and we made our way back up to the VWAP area. We are currently above it, but I'm going to be watching around this VWAP area very carefully. Anyways, now I want to add the fact that, let's just hide these drawings real quick. If you get rid of the extended hours, basically, right, you will notice that there's this massive gap on SPY that formed. We gapped down pretty hard overnight. And now it looks like this thing is approaching this gap resistance right here around this 439.5-ish area. And it looks like SPY is going to try to break above this. If it breaks above this, we're going to be watching this thing try to make its way up to about 440 to 441. That's where we have the 200 EMA. Get above the 200 EMA at 441, and this thing's going to fill the gap all the way up to like the 443s, which could happen over the next couple of trading days. Right now, it's looking strong. We're getting a lot of buyers stepping in. Algos are starting to shift a lot, and we're starting to see many positions being closed on the short side. On the 30-minute time frame, we're seeing the MACD starting to curl after it was very, very oversold at these levels. And I want to add that we had a potential bullish divergence right here that formed, or at least a positive divergence. If you look at the fact that SPY made a higher high relative to a lower low on the RSI compared to the MACD, same thing is going on. That suggests a divergence, and that's what's helping to trigger the bounce. It's also very close to our 200 EMA, just so happened to be. And as this thing is bouncing, it's still continuing to hold up. So it's going to be testing this resistance in the 439s. Watch that very carefully. Break above that, we're going to be watching the 440 to 441 resistance areas. Get above that, and this thing's going to fill this gap all the way up here and make its way back up to where we started yesterday at the higher levels. But if it rejects and gets below VWAP, right, we do have some potential to come all the way down to 438. If that fails us, 437.06 could come, and potentially even the 436s. So watch it very carefully. For now, it's looking strong as we're above VWAP and we're holding up quite nicely. We're seeing good volume. We're seeing buyers stepping in. Things are looking pretty decent so far, so we will see what happens moving forward. But like I said before, this is looking more bullish than bearish right now. It looks like it's going to try to fill this gap. It is looking like the market really wants to bounce, especially because of the bullish divergence, and it's looking quite nice. Same thing happened on Tesla, okay? If you look at Tesla, this is what Tesla looked like. You could see we had this very positive looking divergence that also formed on the RSI. And then just looking at Tesla, I mean, this is quite obvious. It's pushing right back up to this gap resistance area. So very close to where this like 280, a little bit below 280, if anything. Excuse me, sorry guys. A little bit below 280. Get above 280 and we're going to see Tesla push all the way up to 282, if not the high that was made right here. It's very resilient. This was a very good buying opportunity on those calls or any positions like that. And like I said before in my previous videos, I think Tesla's going to pump a lot more once we approach earnings. Once earnings is coming very close, I think it's very likely that that's going to happen. And what do I mean by that? I think Tesla could reach as high as $300 approaching earnings. Not this week, approaching earnings, which is going to be in about 2 weeks from now. Okay, so that's my prediction on Tesla. I think it's looking very strong, and I think it's going to fill this gap very soon as well. Aapl, same thing. And by the way, for Tesla, just to be safe, I don't want to just say the bullish case. If it comes below VWAP, below 275, it could come down to 272.75. This entire support zone. 272 flat has some support at the 50 EMA on the 30-minute time frame. So we're going to be watching those as well, just in case it does break down. But as of right now, it's looking quite nice and very strong. And there's a good chance this is going to try to hold these levels and eventually try to fill this gap up here very, very soon. For Aapl, if you look at Aapl, I mean, this thing was just pumping after getting this big gap to the downside and hasn't fully filled this gap yet. It's going to try to fill this gap up around the like lower 191s. If it continues to break out, we have this imbalance up here around this 192 area, and there's another one up here around the 193 area. So if Aapl keeps holding above this gap resistance and gets above it and holds above it, we could see it start pushing into these higher levels above where we currently are. So we're going to be watching that very carefully. It looks more bullish than bearish. We're about to get a bullish cross on the MACD on the 30-minute time frame, and the 4-hour time frame is showing across. It was barely showing across to the downside, but it hasn't really given us enough data yet. But for now, it's holding up, so it's looking pretty decent. The triple Q is also going to likely continue to pump. We're above our gap resistance. Let's just see if this could get above this like 368 resistance, which happens to be around 367.8, which is where our 50 EMA happens to be. So the resistance there between there and like 368. If it breaks above that, we're going to see this thing fly to 370 to fill this gap up here. Looking quite strong so far. So I just wanted to watch this carefully. For Nvda, holding up nicely. It has the gap all the way up here to about 423. If it gets above this 50 EMA, above 420 to 421, it's going to come all the way up to this like 423 area and potentially even 425, which is where we have this imbalance. Once again, it's looking more bullish, but in case it breaks down, you have to watch the 200 EMA support at this 413.5 level. Same thing with the QQQ. Let me just mention that if you want to be bearish on this thing, you need to see it break below 364 and then 363, and it's going to tank a lot more. So far, it held above 364.5, so there's no signal of the QQQ tanking just yet. No signal of that. Microsoft's looking strong. It got above 340. We got some price upgrades from it, so that's a bullish piece of news. And we're going to be watching if this thing could break the high at 342.73. If it does so, it could get closer to 344 to 345. If it breaks down, VWAP is going to be our support. 340 is going to be support, and 338. AMD has potential. I actually had calls on AMD as well. Got them right around here. It's going to likely try to fill this gap and get very close to this 114 area. But if it breaks down, watch VWAP as support, 111. If it breaks below 110, watch 109 to potentially 107. But it looks to me like it's going to try to fill this gap and get closer to 114. What else is there? I think the NASDAQ is doing the same thing. NASDAQ has this nice gap above, a very big gap above. Very interesting. Maybe tech is going to start pumping soon. Get this thing up there. But for confirmation, watch a break above the 50 EMA at this 13,700 area. That's going to be bullish for the NASDAQ. For SPX, same thing is going on. If it breaks above the 50, 44.22, that's going to be bullish. We're going to be watching if that could happen. If not, it could just continue to trade and range trade around here. It has more, room for it to try to go up. It has more. It's going to be a little harder for it to go up because this gap is kind of far actually from where it is, but it is still very possible. It may take a little bit longer than other stocks, but like I said, it still has potential. Last but not least, for Meta is like flat right now, not really doing anything. It actually got a rejection off this like 300 area, but I'm going to look at the extended hours on this one. It didn't really do much. It didn't even gap up or gap down too hard. If anything, it's pretty flat right now. It's trying to hold above the 50 EMA. Let's just double check this. No, it's actually around the 1 hour time frame. So it's very close to where our support is. Not really doing much. 292.5 is going to be a watch level. If it breaks below that, it could get closer to about 291.5, potentially 290. If it breaks below 290, that's going to be a bearish signal. It could drop a lot more after that. But for now, it's holding up. It's just very choppy. To turn bullish, we want to see this hold above VWAP, above 295. If it starts pushing above that, you're going to be watching 298 as major resistance, then 300. That's what's been stopping Meta so far. But overall, the trend is still quite strong on the bigger time frames. So like even if a stock is pumping, sometimes it needs to like cool off and consolidate just quite a bit because like I said before, we have this nice, weekly bullish trend on Meta that's still valid. There's nothing invalidating it just yet. So it still looks strong on the much larger time frames. All right. So thank you all for listening. watch these support and resistance levels very carefully. And just note, as of right now, the market's looking quite strong. Very, very nice bounce. We want to see how SPY could break these resistances and other stocks out there. Watch support and resistance, be unbiased, and do what you have to do. Just know the odds favor the market trying to push up. I'll see you guys very soon for the next video. Market to the moon as the long term is still incredibly bright, and peace.